we're brokenhearted about the loss of Jim. Jim was an incredible young man. He was truly a man for others. In his previous career as a teacher, he wanted to work with underprivileged students, and as a journalist to give voice to the voiceless, to the people. He was so touched by the suffering of the people in Syria, and he just wanted to be there.
Yeah, he was a bright light in our family. A great listener, a great person for playing games, and just being involved in all family activities. He loved to be home.
And really, the ordeal began 2 years ago, didn't it?
It
Correct.
did. We never heard from, I spoke to Jim 1 week before his capture, and we never spoke to him again. We never heard back from him again. So it's a terrible loss. But we are hoping that through his foundation, that he can live on in a very meaningful way. We really hope that our speaking to you today will, stimulate an international dialogue, because we're concerned as that our allies and that our Western countries need to have a consistent policy and need to work together. Otherwise, these terrorist groups can just manipulate us, and the poor Americans and British are left behind, if you will, and sacrificed. It just...
If you're okay, we'd love to hear about, at what point did you realize that something was wrong? You say that you didn't speak to him
within a day.
Yeah, he was very conscientious about calling us on holidays, particularly Christmas and Thanksgiving. We went through Thanksgiving Day and didn't hear from him. Really, that was of concern. The following day, we got a phone call from one of his colleagues that he had not returned from Syria.
Exactly. Yeah. So we heard right away from his colleagues. The freelancers really are a tight-knit group, and they were watching for him at the border, and he didn't return when he was supposed to. So they were concerned.
So then what went through your mind? Did you know what to do next? What do you do? Do you contact the authorities?
Well, we were in shock that it would happen again, because he had been detained in Libya for 44 days. So we were appalled to think that it was happening again. So yes, of course, we were immediately in touch with, and they were in touch with us. Consular Affairs reached out to us, I think, that later that day.
I think the government knew almost as quickly as we did that Jimmy was missing.
Right.
And then, did these terrorists make contact with you?
Not until 14 months later. So we heard nothing from Jim, nothing about Jim. No one even saw him. He had disappeared. And we were frantic, trying to find out where he was and who was holding him.
If he was alive.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't know until the fall of 2013. A Belgian teenager and his father were in touch with us, who had been with Jim.
The teenager had been with Jim.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I suppose every time someone was released, a hostage was released, it gave you more hope.
Oh, absolutely. And they told us that Jim was, surviving the captivity, and they shared lots of moments of camaraderie and the way they tried to, bolster each other's spirits, and how Jim was quite compassionate, trying to help some of the younger ones who were very despairing. So we were very hopeful.
And were you trying to piece together the story yourself as to what happened to him in that 14 months, or where he may have been?
Well, we mostly, Yalda, were trying to figure out how to get him out. We didn't know how to get him out. We only received emails for about 30 days from the end of November to the end of December of 2013. Then they stopped completely until a week before his death. So we were frantic trying to figure out how to work out something with them.
And were you meeting other hostages who were coming out?
Oh, yes, I did, yes.
You travelled to Europe a number
twice.
of times? Yeah. And you spoke to those hostages?
Yes.
Did you know how, or were you hearing about how he was being treated?
Well, we heard that he nearly died the first year. He was very brutally treated. Jim was one of the whipping boys, if you will, because he was an American. I mean, the American and British seem to have received the worst treatment.
The brunt of the beatings, etc. Yeah.
And so we're very concerned about that going forward, because we hope that this is a wake-up call. We hope that your good British citizens, beautiful humanitarian people, and our courageous journalists have not died for nothing.
And aid workers, right.
Yes, yes.
Indeed. And can you tell us what those emails from the terrorists said to you?
Well, the initial email said that they wanted 100 million euros or the release of all Muslim prisoners. Now, the email was sent to our email, but it was clearly addressed to our government. I mean, we have no way of answering any of those demands.
They were all addressed to our government
they were
directly.
very insulting to both us as citizens and very demeaning to our government.
Right.
And you took those letters to the authorities?
They were emails, and we immediately shared them with authorities, immediately. And the FBI was very good about looking at our responses and making small changes, but we did the, return.
Yeah, in hindsight, I think we angered the captors because our government wasn't responding. We were responding as individual citizens, and we don't think we had anything to offer that they really wanted.
Right.
Do you think the government could have done things differently?
We do, and we hope that they're willing to listen. And we feel, for one, we wish they had worked more closely with the UK and with their other allies, and that together they had formulated some way to get all of them out. They were all held together, it turns out.
Same cell.
18 of them, all together. And we knew that fairly early on, and we just are dismayed that we could not work together in that regard. And additionally, being in a family of an American hostage was a very frightening experience, very bewildering experience, and I think difficult for our government to deal with. They didn't know quite what to do with us. We were never told anything. We had no idea.
We were told repeatedly that his situation was receiving a very high priority, that everything possible was being done, but they couldn't tell any of us anything about it, because it was classified information. And this included even the group of families which we organized of the hostages. So there just wasn't any information that we could hang on to. So we really don't know what was going on.
We have no idea.
Did you feel alone?
Oh, very, very alone. We had, except for the support, of course, of our family and our church community, we had many people praying for Jim and our family, a lot of support that way. And I do feel the government felt they were doing much, but they never shared anything with us, so we have no idea.
And you, at the same time, were trying to raise a ransom.
Well, finally, at the end, it appeared that that was the way everyone was getting out. So as a family, we had legal counsel, and we started accepting pledges in hopes that we could negotiate as a family, because we didn't know if our government was negotiating at all.
I mean, the real question is, what other alternatives did we have? If they weren't if we didn't have information that high-level negotiations were ongoing, and there was no plan for military extraction, which we later heard there was and did. It did happen, despite the fact that it was a failure. We were left with nothing else to offer Jimmy. I also need to make sure that we recognize the courage of those people who were involved in the attempted extraction.
We certainly appreciate that, but it seemed much too late. And we had information on their location for about 6 months prior.
And you were pushing to get an operation going, I suppose?
No,
or
we were
something?
pushing for some. We
Something.
tried to stay out of the way.
Right.
We were hoping that people smarter than us could figure all this out. And we certainly didn't have any experience to demand A or B, but we were hoping that, again, experts were in charge and doing whatever it was necessary to make this happen. I personally think that everybody underestimated the ISIS group, the
We did.
horrible terrorist anger, evil,
The hatred.
hatred that was
Hatred
in
for
that
us.
group, and I think all of a sudden it blew up.
Were you conflicted, or was there confusion about how much you should publicise or how public you should go with this?
Oh, definitely, Yalda. And initially, we were told he was captured right at the end of November, and we're told not to say anything. So all through the holidays, we said nothing. And then finally, in January, we thought, nobody's noticing. I mean, Jim's gone. We have no idea. So we chose to go public for the next 6 months and really tried to, a lot of his journalistic friends were looking for him and trying to help us also. However, once we started to receive information from the captors, they told us to be quiet also. So then we were concerned. Then we were conflicted. We thought, well, we didn't dare.
And we stopped.
And we stopped at that point.
Do they give reasons as to why they wanted you?
No idea. We have no idea about that. But in hindsight, we regret that because I feel it was hard for our government to give our American hostages the priority attention that I feel they needed. I would like to feel that our governments would consider our brave humanitarian citizens who go out in harm's way to be worth making a high priority.
And then that horrible video came out. How difficult was it to watch that?
Well, we didn't. I didn't. That's their propaganda. They were just using our son to horrify us and the world,
What advice would you now give to other families?
We are working with.
Yeah, we're part of this idea of Jim's Legacy Foundation is to build an organization and perhaps work with Hostage or Hostage UK very closely so that we can emulate that program and provide support to hostage families, to share with them our experience and where things are, where they may be going, etc. We want very desperately to establish some form of a hostage unit within our government so there's one person who can actually have high-level information and share it with us as a hostage family, etc. And we would really like to, again, as Diane said, establish some forum for international discussion, of this whole process of hostage taking, kidnapping, what's fair, how can we do a better job of doing that?
Because it hasn't worked. And now here, we're proud to be Americans. Jim certainly was. And we, have such respect for the UK and our allies. But we're concerned that we really need to come together to fight these people and to come to understand them, to be shrewd enough to bother to figure them out because they hate us. And unless we work together, we feel we're going to be weaker apart,
Because of course some governments do negotiate. Even today we're hearing about Turkey, the prisoner swap. Mm-hmm. So are you saying that there are other options or ways?
Yes. And I feel unless we can come together as a world community in a way that we truly agree, and are willing to act together, I don't think we're going to.
And I'm certainly not naive. This is going to be a huge mountain to climb, but to do nothing means that Jim and all of these young men have died in vain. It's just we have to do something better than what we've done.
We don't have the answers, Yalda. We're a family. All we know is that our son and the other good British and Americans were killed. And yeah, from our part, it seems that our country could have engaged them more and negotiated in some way.
I mean, there already is a market, for captives. There already is an amount of money that's being garnered by the jihadists doing this sort of business. So the amount of money is small in terms of the overall financial picture, in terms of what the ISIS group has behind them. But it means everything to me as a father and to Diane as a mother to be able to get our child out. So,
well, plus, excuse me, honey, to be honest, if our part of the world, if Great Britain and if we in the United States want to know what's happening in these areas, we need to support these fearless journalists and courageous humanitarian workers. I mean, they're heroes. And on that note, I certainly we want to give our deep condolences to the Henning and Haynes family. I mean, they're experiencing the horror of the Sotloffs than we have.
Are you in touch with them?
Oh, yes, certainly the Sotloffs. And we have not yet spoken with the Henning family, but our hearts go out to them. And he was a hero, as was our son and Stephen and David, the best of our countries. And so we would hope that our countries would want to engage with our allies and find a better way forward.
The argument that they put forward, some of these governments, is that if you pay these terrorist organizations, you're adding to their business.
But that is already the case. Anybody going abroad as a journalist like yourself or
vacationer,
a tourist, anybody, we've seen it. We're all vulnerable to this hate. So unless we find a way as a community, a world community, to deal with this, some of this terrorism is going to take us over. It's very concerning to us. So it's a priority to us.
And I think that, yes, it does support jihadist activity, but it's a little more sophisticated than that. We're not going to support a enemy nation by paying hostages, by paying ransom for 3 or 4 hostages. That's just not the case. And paying the hostage money wouldn't mean that we'd end the war or the conflict. We would just try to get our citizens out and move forward with the issues on the table. And I do feel that the bombing, et cetera, is appropriate right now. I'm not trying to say that bombing should have been halted for any or all of these young men and women.
But we do feel there's a place for talking with the people we disagree with negotiating, with seeing where they are. And I know maybe that's idealistic, Yalda, but if we don't come to understand the people that hate us, to me that's a real concern. I mean, we can't ignore them,
Are you in contact with Abdul Rahman Kesik's family at all? Paul Kesik, whose family have just released a letter.
Oh, Paul Kesik.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, we know them. We met them in May. Very poignant situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jim and Peter had grown quite close in their captivity, and our hearts go out to them. I just spoke with Peter's mother 2 days ago, actually. So it's, and he had gone there because he wanted to help the Syrian people. He wanted to bring them medical aid. A young man with a great courage and big heart, like our Jim. So it's just of huge concern for us. And we just don't want them to have died in vain, Yalda. There must be a better way. And we pray that it'll stimulate discussion among you
debate,
talented
anything.
Journalists,
just anything,
and among our governments to really consider this and do some soul searching and some discussion.
How would you finally? How would you like Jim to be remembered?
Well, I feel that Jim was a man for others. He really was a good friend, and everyone who knew him liked him, which is unusual in this world, but everyone we've talked to him felt at ease with Jim. He was a humble, easygoing sort of guy with a big heart. And I want him to be remembered for his heart, for the way he cared for underprivileged kids, be it in the United States or in Aleppo. He had a big heart.
Yeah, I would want him to be remembered as a friend to all he met.
And he was proud to be a journalist, too. He wanted to give voice to the voiceless.